Welcome to Focus Washington. I'm Chuck Conconi, and my guest today is Ron Faucheux, who is head of the Clarus Research Group. Ron, thank you for being here today.
Thank you.
Ron, you've been watching all the polls and all the political polls. Were the polls accurate in any way over this period of time? Did they predict it?
Yeah, generally, well, first of all, polls aren't supposed to predict. They're supposed to just tell you where things are at the time of the poll being taken, because subsequent events can change circumstances. But generally speaking,
What an easy way out for you.
Oh
but
no,
go ahead.
it's
Yes,
the
I
accurate
know.
way
Okay.
out. But most of the polls were accurate, I think, in terms of the polls that were taken right before the election. There are examples of some bad numbers, I think, on the part of a few polls here and there. But generally speaking, I think if you followed the polls and if you looked at the polling averages we do in lunchtime politics, you would generally have been able to have predicted the winner in most every contest so far.
Well, now that we have Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump, and all the predictions are taking place, and all the polls, and I read your daily poll every day, there's an indication that are there coattails? Does Hillary have coattails, or does Trump have coattails?
Well, you have coattails if you win the presidency by a big margin. If somebody wins by 1 or 2 points, there's really no coattails. But if one of these candidates wins by 7 or 8 points or more, then there would be coattails. And so that's one of the things that we have to look for. I think the Republican members of the Senate who are seeking re-election right now are scared to death that Trump ultimately won't do well and he'll bring them down with him. And so that's the big thing that I think most people in politics are looking at.
Well, within the volatility, if I could learn to speak sometime, in the volatility of this campaign, do the Democrats have an opportunity to win back the Senate and gain seats in the House, or is that it's not going to be a bloodbath, you know?
Well, I think the Democrats have an opportunity to win back the Senate, not just because of the presidential candidates, but because of their exposure. They have more than twice as many Senate seats on the ballot. They have 24 Senate seats on the ballot, whereas the Democrats only have 10. So they have much greater exposure to loss. And a number of their incumbents right now are polling very close with their challengers or behind. So I think there's a real opportunity for the Democrats to pick up.
And one of those is John McCain. I mean,
one of those is John McCain.
Who looks like he's running scared.
Yeah, and he not only has a general election problem against Democrats, he has a Republican primary problem as well.
So it's interesting to me that is there really a possibility coming up of a brokered convention?
No, there's no more brokered convention.
Well, I know there are no, but I mean that you're going to have a convention floor fight.
No, I don't think so. I think that a majority of the delegates in both conventions will follow the party line, whatever that is at the time, and I'm sure there will be some people dissenting from that, and there will be some speeches made dissenting from that, which is more than we've seen in other conventions. But generally speaking, I think both sides will have their people in charge.
But now that Bernie Sanders, isn't he seen as a spoiler? Because if he carries it to the convention as he is threatening, it can make a big difference. And he is the one candidate who, in the polling, seems to do much stronger against Trump than Hillary Clinton does.
Yeah, I mean, Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign is over with. I mean, Hillary Clinton has more than enough delegates now to win the nomination. She's won more popular votes, and so that race is over with. What Sanders is now doing, and it's up to him. He's the candidate, and he's run a very effective campaign. But his whole strategy is to influence the future of the Democratic Party and where it's going, and he wants it to go towards the populist left that he represents. And because he's really not running for president anymore, he wants to bring that battle into the convention.
But if he causes a lot of problems at the convention, I mean, and Donald Trump has already said he wants his people to come to him. He's welcoming them. Is there a possibility of that?
Well, there's always a possibility of some Sanders supporters to go to Trump. Sanders actually lost the Democratic vote in the primaries by a substantial margin. He carried the independent vote that voted in Democratic primaries by a big margin. So I think a lot of the independent voters, particularly on the left end of the spectrum, particularly among very young voters, it's potential that those voters won't quickly go to Hillary Clinton. And some of them may ultimately vote for the Green Party candidate, the Libertarian
Now,
candidate.
you said that in your poll, and I thought that was interesting in that Hillary doesn't do that well if they get the kind of votes the Libertarians and the Green Party candidate.
Well, you know, it's interesting you raised that because most of the polls now are showing what would happen in a two-way race with just Trump and Clinton, and then they have a four-way race with the Libertarian and Green candidate. And interestingly, both Clinton and Trump, at this point anyway, are losing about the same when you go from the two-way race to the four-way race. So it's not all coming from Trump, and it's not all coming from Clinton. But having these other candidates in the race in this particular instance could be very important because we've never had two presidential nominees who had such high negative ratings. I mean, both of them have negative ratings of about or beyond 60%. And so there's a lot of voters who will be voting in November or who could be voting in November who don't want to vote for either Trump or Clinton. So the question is, do they stay home or do they go in the voting booth and throw their vote to a Libertarian or to a Green Party candidate?
Isn't that also unusual this year that both candidates are not very well liked?
Yeah, absolutely. We've never seen anything like this. Usually in a presidential election, the negative rating of the major candidates at this stage of the game is probably in the mid 40% range. Both of these candidates, they're over 60%. And guess what? It's going to keep going up because the Democratic Party hasn't spent its $1 billion attacking Trump, and the Republican Party hasn't spent its $1 billion attacking Clinton.
Now, the Republican leadership clearly seems frightened and nervous about Trump, but there really is nothing they can do about it, is there? And why hasn't the leadership, why have they been so reluctant to take him on?
Well, I think they're reluctant to take him on now because he's won the nomination fair and square. I mean, he got more votes than anybody else. He got more delegates than anybody else. He's going to the convention and is going to win easily on the first ballot. Whether they like it or not, he will be on top of their ticket. And their incumbent senators who may be in trouble are going to either have to embrace him or run away from him. Or in the case of Mark Kirk, the Republican senator from Illinois, he flat out said he's not going to support Donald Trump for president. So it makes it particularly difficult on them, and it puts the leaders of the party in a difficult position.
And there's a real danger this could wreck the Republican Party.
Well, there's a danger this election could wreck either party or both parties. You know, one of the things that people still aren't talking about that much, but it could wreck Hillary Clinton's campaign, is if there is criminal action on the part of the email scandal. And if that would happen, I mean, as time goes by, the chances of that are less, but the possibility that there could be some criminal action that she's implicated in, even if she's not the subject of it, is still there, and it still hangs there. So that could be a big blow to the Democrats. So there's a lot of banana peels between now and November on the paths for both of these candidates.
One last quick question for you. Who's going to win?
Well, if I had to predict today, I wouldn't bet my house or my car on it, but I would bet, based on the current polling that we're seeing, that Clinton would win. But you know, we've yet to go to the convention. We don't know what kind of mistakes both sides make. We have no idea how Donald Trump will perform as a candidate once he's the Republican nominee. That's completely uncharted territory. So who knows where it goes? But I think as it stands now, looking at the basic demographics in the Electoral College, I think Clinton goes in with the advantage.
We'll get back and talk to this again. Okay. Ron Faucheux,
thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Sure.
I'm Chuck Conconi, and this has been Focus Washington.